We can certainly do public comment.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the Police Commission meeting of October 11th. It's a little after 5:30. We are currently short of a quorum, so we're going to move forward with some informational items, and then we believe we will have quorum soon, and then we can move on with record matters for that. Have the agenda here. I'm going to suggest we keep public and commissioner comments where they are, and then would you prefer to move forward with, I guess we could just skip minutes and move it to the end?
Skip
Regarding
the
trailers?
guardian
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Any other suggestions on the agenda? Okay, then we'll move forward. Did anybody submit a public comment request?
I did not see one.
All right, well, in the absence of that formality, you're still welcome to come up. Does anybody have public comment for the police commission today? Okay, fair enough. Well, let's move on to commissioner comments then. I guess I'll just say to everyone here and watching on video, remember that if you would like to register to vote, October 16th is the deadline. And if you're curious as to why we don't have same-day voter registration, Google Rajneeshis, and you will see why. So that may or may not change in the future, but just for historical interest, that is why we do not allow same-day voter registration. So.
That's interesting.
I apologize for my absence recently. I got married and
Hey.
really busy, but I'm back, and I have to leave early tonight for a semi-annual union meeting as well, so I'll be here for a bit.
All right. Well, I apologize for missing last month. I was out at a planning session regarding one of our companies. I would like to, if the board will indulge me, I'd like to spend a little extra time on my comments so I can share. We've had 2 civilian review board meetings since the last time I was here. And I'd like to share both of those. So like the case that we looked at, both of them, I think it would be good for command and good for the police commission to hear kind of the 2 cases that we looked at. It probably would take me about 5 minutes or so, if that's all right.
Any objections? Please proceed.
All right, thank you. So we met on September 11th and last night. So I'll talk about the first one. The first one reviewed on September 11th involved an acting watch commander. One of his officers was following a stolen vehicle that failed to yield when that officer turned on his lights. The watch commander let him continue to fall for a while until the vehicle made it into Springfield. Based on the information radioed to the watch commander by the officer following the vehicle and the CAD, which is computer-aided dispatch. The watch commander did not think the activity rose to a level of a pursuit. Because other agencies got involved, namely Springfield, I think OSP was involved, the watch commander brought the event to the attention of his supervisor. There was a discussion about whether or not the conduct amounted to a pursuit. There was disagreement between the 2 supervisors. This is where things got a bit off track. And I'm giving all this context, so I think it's important for the issues that we reviewed and for potential discussion items here. The Civilian Review Board really think that what followed was mostly the result of failed communications between the 2, and that things could have went a lot different. The commander supervisor said to run the scenario by the EVOC sergeant for a discussion. The commander did so and shared the same information that he had, namely the CAD and the audio. Based on that discussion, the EVOC sergeant did not think the activities constituted a pursuit. Accordingly, no blue team report was entered at that time. Later, the watch commander supervisor directed the entry of a blue team resort as some other folks reviewed the ICV, which importantly was not available during the incident. Apparently, you only get to radio traffic and you get to CAD, and the ICV is uploaded or downloaded, however you want to say that, later. A view of the ICV made it clear the activities were in line with the pursuit. One issue, training opportunity for the pursuing officer about information that's being relayed to the watch commander. So that was a little sub-issue here. Here's where things got a little sideways and allegations began to be leveled. There was an allegation that the watch commander did not recognize the activities constituted a pursuit until after the event. No one disagreed that based on the CAD and the audio, the watch commander's assessment at the time was appropriate, meaning without the ICV, it appeared fine and the decisions were fine. It's kind of like a little bit Monday morning, it's kind of after the fact when the ICV got introduced, that it arose to the level of pursuit. Adding the ICV later changed his view, so the watch commander reviewed the ICV and he too agreed that it was a pursuit. The allegation that the watch commander did not recognize pursuit until after the event was confusing. It was clear that he actually did recognize it as pursuit. So the allegation, we had a lot of discussion about how it was framed and whether it was appropriate. Thus, the board wondered how could we plug the existing facts into this particular allegation. It was clear the watch commander did, in fact, recognize this as a pursuit after the event. The board felt the allegation was not properly written or representative of the concern. If the concern was the watch commander should have reviewed the ICV after the event, then made a decision, and not doing so was a violation of the policy, the allegation should have reflected as much, and it would have been sustained, and should have been sustained. If the issue was the watch commander should have fully completed the blue team report and or more timely, that should have been the allegation and sustained. But as written, the board did not think the allegation should have been sustained because it was simply, didn't recognize it was pursuit till after the event, which he did. So it was factually impossible not to recognize it as a pursuit after the fact. The facts clearly, let's see here. Oh, the second allegation was the watch commander misrepresented the facts to the E-Box sergeant. To the board's dismay, this allegation was sustained. The facts clearly demonstrate there was some confusion between the watch commander and his supervisor, and the directive and or communication between the two was ambiguous, and it was clear the supervisors were not on the same page. The watch commander simply presented the CAD and the audio to the EVOC sergeant as directed, so he was not misleading as to the instruction from the supervisor. It was just simply to have a conversation with the EVOC sergeant, and that is what happened. Based on that information that he had, the CAD and the radio traffic, the EVOC sergeant also didn't feel like it was pursuit. It wasn't until the ICV was added that things changed. The final allegation was that the watch commander was untruthful. Everyone, including the command staff, agreed there was insufficient evidence. And like I said earlier, I gave you this all as context so I can share some of the concerns that's worth consideration. There were concerns about how the allegation should be formed and by whom. In this case, the first allegation did not meet the facts, and people worked pretty hard to find a way to sustain the allegations because folks did observe there were some things that could have gone differently and perhaps better. But the fact is the allegation was deficient. It seems like some work, perhaps guidance, on how to formulate allegations would be reasonable. Also, there was a suggestion to the auditor that his office consider meeting with the author of the allegation where the allegation seemed deficient. If the allegation stands as presented, then only address the allegation as presented. Don't try to force the facts into a badly framed allegation. There were some confusion regarding the pursuit policy. The policy allowed for continuing to follow for failure to yield, even if traffic rules were being broken, so long as the violated rules were not relevant. One interpretation of this policy was where speed was in excess of the posted limit. The traffic infraction was relevant as they were driving, so that made the pursuit, and the pursuit made it a pursuit, and the pursuits should have been called off. The other interpretation, which happened to be by the authors of the policy, was the speed was not relevant as it was not reckless and generally matched the speed of other traffic. To the extent this policy has some ambiguity, it might be worth reviewing. Perhaps some clarity as to when ICV should be looked at in this sort of situation. Should it be expected that the ICV be reviewed when available after it is downloaded? Question. There was a discussion about when something should be entered into the blue team. So there was some kind of disagreement in the timing of ICV and when something should go on the blue team. Also, the conversation with the EVOC sergeant was informal. Should a blue team report get entered to inquire? Sorry, apologize here. Okay, let's see, there was some confusion. Oh, should a blue team report get entered to inquire of the EVOC sergeant so there's an official record or request whether or not there was a pursuit? There was some confusion about who can order a pursuit review. The watch commander was not under the impression he could order the review, but his supervisor believed that he could. Training. Lots of discussions on training. It was acknowledged the acting watch commander had no formal training on the duties as a watch commander before he was appointed as a watch commander. Should we set someone up for failure? Shouldn't we give him or her the tools necessary to succeed? At the end of the day, the board felt like this incident represented many learning opportunities regarding policies and practices, but was also blown out of proportion and went unnecessarily in an adversarial manner when it was a pretty simple communication breakdown. There was a real learning and mentoring opportunity here, and the board felt that it was missed in a material way. And also felt that since these two are supervisors have to work with each other, that creates a whole nother dynamics coming back in the office the next day after something like this. So that was September 11th. Last night, the CRB also met and reviewed a case involving supervisor that was on the scene to sort out a fight. There was a call about a fight. The facts are a homeless person was going through the garbage bag looking for cans, and a guest of a house took issue with the canning. The guest charged down the stairs and chased a reporting party across the street and beat on him, including a rear naked chokehold. The guest also damaged the reporting party's bike. And the reporting party reported injuries to his finger and his neck. Those are very summary of the facts. There were many issues to discuss. The allegations were, first one, unsatisfactory performance for failing to summon medical care for the reporting party, and that was sustained. It was pretty clear that the person who beat on the homeless person received medical care, but not the homeless person. The supervisor failed to take, second allegation, the supervisor failed to take law enforcement action based on the homeless status of the victim. That allegation was deemed unfounded by command, sustained by the auditor, and insufficient evidence by a majority of the board. So all over the map on that one. There was no question there was signs of unequal or evidence of unequal treatment by the supervisor between the reporting party and the guy who did the beating. That's not in question. The question was it because the person was homeless or something else, and didn't feel like there was enough to point to the fact the person was homeless, but clearly was treated unequally. The third allegation was unsatisfactory performance. The supervisor failed to properly interpret the physical force and defense of premises statute. Basically, the supervisor got it wrong that a guest could enforce the statute, which is true. The guest could not. Homeowner could, not the guest. The fourth one, the supervisor unsatisfactory performance. The supervisor failed to conform to the standards of rank of sergeant in ensuring a thorough and fair investigation. This allegation was added by the chief upon his review, and it was sustained by everyone. So this was kind of new and unique because it came in after the fact and not before as part of the investigation. The board, while being aware of the impact of piling on charges, felt like another allegation could have easily been sustained, and that had to do with courtesy. The way that this person, the supervisor, spoke to this homeless person and dismissed him, and lack of care, compassion, concern was disturbing at a minimum. It was hard to see how anybody could be less caring towards this homeless person. The victim was treated very differently from the aggressor, who freely admitted getting aggressive. Beyond the unequal treatment, other issues that were discussed included: what are the minimal level of expectations for an investigation? Here, the call was to a fight involving a knife. The supervisor sort of took over the scene and clearly wanted to kick this matter loose so folks could get on to other calls. So very little investigation was done despite the serious nature of the call that was entered into the system. Also, there was a discussion about when a supervisor comes on the scene, what should he do to gather sufficient information and have a reasonable understanding of what is going on. The supervisor advised no report was necessary, so there were questions about when a report should be filed. The facts seemed clear this fight was not a mutual combat situation as described. It was an intoxicated man beating up on a homeless person. There were concerns the aggressor was not held accountable for his actions under the circumstances. More than one CRB member had concerns the homeless status may have played a role in that supervisor's decision. Finally, the supervisor indicated the victim was not in custody, but the victim was in handcuffs and certainly not free to leave. Thus, there was a concern about knowledge of when someone is considered in custody. I don't think, the board certainly didn't think that person was free to go. Certainly agree that he was in custody. Sorry about the harsh language here. This was a terrible reflection on this supervisor and EPD. And equally disappointing was this supervisor had subordinates watching. Really not a good example for his officers. The board would say it was very impressed with Chief Skinner's approach in his review and his initiative to add the fourth allegation regarding unsatisfactory performance as a sergeant. When it came about because the existing allegations didn't quite seem to address all the facts, especially the lack of any meaningful investigation and the unequal treatment of the two parties. Heavy, that's a lot. I appreciate the indulgence. Happy to take any questions if you ever have it.
I have a question. So is there anything that policy-wise that came out of some of those things, Steve, that maybe we should think about or look at?
Yeah, the earlier case, and I'm happy to, I can email this out to Jeremy because there was a lot there.
Yeah.
But it touched on a number of policies, and some may just be good discussion for command to have. But to the extent there's some confusion about pursuit and how you identify something as pursuit, when something's added to a blue team and so on, there's some things worth considering. So I'm happy to send that out and we can have some more discussion later.
Why don't we could certainly request that the chief or AIC chief could take a look at that and see if they want us to take a look at the pursuit policy. It strikes me in particularly in light of what happens when people have reasonable disagreements about what a pursuit is and how that should be addressed after the fact. And you may or may not see a problem with that, but if there is a gap, maybe we should address it.
What I can tell you is that there is some confusion. We have relatively recently come up with a more restrictive pursuit policy. And I think there has been some informal discussion about should we as a command staff take a look at that, both pursuits and our forcible stop policy. Some of our neighboring jurisdictions have much different policies. So I think it's worthy to continue to take a look at that and have this body be part of that, obviously.
And we looked at that new policy when that came out. We went through that review, and because I would say that was within the last 12 months or less, wasn't it? So, but yeah, no, those are the kind of things we want to look at. So good. Thanks, Steve.
I'll hand back to Bill since he's arrived.
Thank you. So I'm saying we're on comments, or are we just going around?
We're just going around. We were at Howell.
Yeah, so let's just continue on.
You had something to say before we move on? I just made a list of the various policy things as you were talking that occurred to me, but if you're going to talk.
I'll send it out.
Yeah.
I just have a comment about the, but I see the community, we're gonna have an update later. I went to one of the meetings, so I'll save that for later, so.
I do have a commissioner comment, but you go ahead first.
Tell us first.
Nothing significant. I did recently see that awful news of that homeless gentleman that was murdered downtown. It was deeply disturbing. I know some other commissioners on the Human Rights Commission that were deeply concerned about that as well. So I don't know if we're going to discuss it ever tonight, but just wanted to point that out there and let you all know what the Human Rights Commission is going to be working with some city council members, and just really, I know we've been having a lot of troubles downtown. I know that this commission, certainly the Human Rights Commission, has been worried about it, but things are getting out of hand, and I think we need to figure out at least a step in the right direction towards a long-term solution. So just want you all to know that it's been on the mind.
I've heard continued concern over the homelessness downtown and various enforcement things. In particular, I've heard complaints about the bike policy, the bait bike policy. Both initially when it first came out, and again that something about the bikes being overvalued. So I'd like to take a look at the bike policy, the bait bike policy as well at some point, just so that I can put those concerns to rest when they get brought up again.
Anything else, Terry?
No.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I wanted to, we mentioned it at council, but I wanted to bring it up again, that the EPD was involved with an incident over by Monroe Middle School. And I felt like they handled it very well. I have a student at Monroe and a student at Sheldon, and it was the talk of a week, but when the kids came out and there were officers there, I understand it was a very positive environment and things settled down rather quickly. The kids kind of, discussed it among themselves, but it doesn't appear to be, having any long-lasting negative effects. And the only criticism I heard was on the 4J side, that the kids at Monroe were confused about what was going on at Sheldon, and so they were concerned about, friends or siblings that were at Sheldon, because they understood that they were good and they were safe, but rumors, and they all have cell phones, even though they're not supposed to, and so rumors started flying, and there was concern that there was someone at Sheldon causing trouble, and that, but otherwise I felt like our police force handled it very well,
My apologies for not being here last time. Take too long to explain why. This may be partly hallucination on my part, I don't know. But for the last couple months or so, I think I've been seeing more positive bits about EPD in the media, and also hearing some from people in my end of town. It's probably sheer chance, but we've noticed more patrol cars sort of in our end, in the southeast quadrant, probably just on other calls. But it's nice. People like seeing the patrol car. People I know like seeing the patrol cars in town. And I have recently a really positive impact view of the impact that EPD is having, including some of those difficult cases where it seems to me EPD has handled things really well, and you're getting arrests reasonably quickly on really disturbing cases, and so I just sharing a general positive recent impression of EPD and its function.
Thank you. So I'll comment about the Monroe Middle School, or the incident that happened adjacent to Monroe Middle School. I too am very impressed with the job that our initial responding officers did, our detectives did. Arrests have been made in that case, and we are so fortunate that something much worse didn't happen. I mean, that was a scary incident, and it really was kind of the first of 3 incidents that we've had now in the last few weeks that I don't think are typically representative of the crime trends we have here in Eugene, the two homicides. Excellent, excellent work by everybody who responded to that. And I couldn't be prouder, and I know the chief would say this, that we have arrests in every single one of those cases. And it is really representative of the good work that everybody at EPD has done, from the investigators who were pulling double and triple shifts to the initial responding patrol officers, forensics people, our professional staff, everybody. So I'm really proud of that. So I'll leave it at that.
Good. We're just going around commissioners' comments. Alan, do you want to jump in there before we close it off?
No, thanks.
Okay. So, well, I just want to.
So, I'm sorry I'm late. I was at the coast today. I drove there and drove back. It took a little while longer than I thought.
Well, I'm going to also apologize for being late today. Marty, thank you for starting the meeting and getting things going. I try not to do that on a regular basis. But a couple things that I want to talk about. One is I want to remind us all that we are not a complaint commission, that we're not to handle or look at complaints. And I bring this up is because I had a phone call. Somebody looked up the commission whose son was going to university, wanted to complain about service response to a call. And so I talked to Jeremy and I talked to Leah at the auditor's office, and we want to make sure those calls are directed to Leah at the auditor's office whenever they come in, even if they're just service level. They're talking about how long it took the officers to show up or something like that. That Leah tracks those, the auditor tracks those, so we want to make sure those calls get to her, so direct those people to them as much as we can. I know we all get emails or calls from time to time. Just want to remind everybody that we're not here to handle those or talk about those with the people. Just hit those on.
No idea who Leah is or a number or...
She's the assistant.
Leah sits right in the back out here at our meetings, and she's the deputy auditor over there.
But yeah, our office has a general line, so I would say auditor's office.
Auditor's office.
Auditor's office, okay.
Sorry, not just that. I don't mean just say just only send the Leah. But it was good. I didn't realize that even the service level calls need to go through their office, so because they are technically a complaint, so we want to make sure those get handled and we try not to do anything with them. I just want to remind everybody about that. Also, I want to say that it seems that our SWAT group and our detectives have been very busy in the last 30 days, and appreciate everything is handled well, and we haven't had anything go the really bad way with the officers, and so I want to say it was a great job. So I appreciate that. So, with that, we'll move on to the review and approve of minutes. Anybody have any comments or questions about the minutes from last month? And if we don't, I'll look for a motion.
I'll move to approve minutes.
Second. Perfect. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Perfect. Thank you. With that, we will invite Lieutenant Mozan to come up and give us an update on the trailers. You can sit right here. Here, you can sit next to me. Full table tonight.
You can just call me Scott.
I'm sure you want to be called Scott.
You can blame it on Scott.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Lieutenant Doug Mozan, for those of you that don't know me. I have been privileged to work on this camera trailer project, or what we're calling Guardian Trailer project. It is an interesting, definitely an interesting bit of learning along the way. For a little transparency, I'm not a tech guy, and so if you have major technical questions, I may be able to fake my way through it, but probably not.
The camera's the things at the top.
Right, exactly. So we initially looked at this, and I learned a little bit about our purchasing process, and it turns out if you're going to buy something under $150,000, you have to put out a what's called a request for quote rather than a request for proposal. It's more informal. And that's the route we took initially. I put this out to a bunch of known makers of this technology, and one emerged after we did some vetting of the initial bids or quotes. And then we did some webinars with the top 3 of those 5, and we saw how they performed in the webinars, and that kind of informed our finalists, which was Mobile Pro. They were pretty expensive. I mean, these things are not at all cheap. And our chief was fairly ambitious about the way he set about it. He said, I want 3 or 4 of these things straight away. So I'm thinking about this price tag and how that's going to happen, and we had to figure out how to make it happen. So Mobile Pro, as it turns out, has a GSA contract, which allows the department to use a different method of purchasing rather than the RFQ, and essentially it allows us to sidestep that $150,000 cap, even though I sought very vigorously to stay within budget. I visited their factory in Eagan, Minnesota. Not much to do in Eagan, so it was nice that their factory was pretty big. They manufacture these trailers from mostly locally sourced parts in Minnesota. And then the electronics themselves are made in a variety of places. The cameras that this particular company and a couple of the others that we looked at spec mostly are Chinese-made cameras that the U.S. government has stopped doing business with because of some firmware security issues. So what we did was, along the way, we had a couple of the top bidders respec with Bosch cameras, which are a comparable product to these. They're very nice cameras, what they use. I was worried about the security issue when we're looking at the World Games coming out. So Bosch cameras were similarly priced, similarly capable, and more secure, so that's where we went. The attention to detail and the fit and finish of these trailers was very impressive. And what I particularly appreciated about them, in my limited understanding of tech, was that looking at the way things were put together, if something needed to be fixed or swapped or upgraded down the road, it was clear to me that it would be very easy for our in-house IT and fleet and radio techs to do. So we moved forward to the purchase. We got the GSA contract purchasing program. We got 3 of them. 2 of the, I don't think my pointer's going to show up here, but 2 of the smaller version and 1 of the bigger. Just leave it there for a moment. We don't have a loading dock at the fleet shop, so that's all right. And so what that meant was that we had to use a special tow truck to get them off. The trailers themselves have huge batteries, 900 amp hours in the smaller of the 2 and 1200 amp hours in the larger, which means they could be deployed with just battery alone for quite a while. They have redundant power systems. They have generators on the unit that automatically fire up once they sense the battery is low enough, and they have solar panels that look like the Hubble Space Telescope when you deploy them out there. They're really something. I mean, they're more than at least 6 feet wide when you get those things out, but they push a significant amount of amperage even on a cloudy day like you see here, and keep those batteries charged. At the top of the mast, we added cameras, of course, but we also added lights so that we could light up a scene at night and enhance our ability to investigate. We added some strobe lights, we added a speaker and a microphone so that we could even communicate with somebody who was near the trailer in the event they needed communicating. There are a number of analytics and ways that we can set alerts if somebody were to come near our trailer in some circumstances. I don't know how to do that yet, so we're learning. But there could be a circumstance when someone's messing with the trailer and we need to chat with them. So, mind you, the intent of these trailers is really passive monitoring, not so much active. So it would require somebody to first know there's something going on, and then look, and then see somebody there, and then get to the right software to make an announcement. So it's not as Big Brother-esque as it sounds. They are currently at the shops. They're awaiting graphics. I've talked to our local graphic contractor who we have a good relationship with in the city, and these are the proofs that I got from that company. I said I wanted branding on all 4 sides. That's what the chief asked for, and he wanted the Guardian trailer clearly visible. The plan is to also add some sort of a sticker that will announce that there's video and audio recording. And again, we may choose to use audio very sparingly, if at all, just because, but the capability we have. So it may be a storage issue, and we're there to capture crimes in progress, and probably not going to be something we get from audio. Any questions so far? Okay, so October 23rd, the vendor is going to be coming to town, and we've invited staff from a number of different work units within the police department, from our community service officers that are likely to be towing and potentially deploying these things, to a couple of our investigations staff who may be using this thing to leverage in a given area, our parks officers, and our downtown officers, and some folks from our information technology, information services division. And then evidence control unit and forensic evidence unit, those are the ones that deal with video. ECU will be the ones that actually store this video. So their staff are going to be intimately aware of this product as well. What I've heard from other agencies that have used these products is that in areas where they have high crime or have problems, they can park these trailers and see an immediate decrease in activity because nobody really wants to be videoed if they're up to no good. So that's a great thing in terms of target hardening and prevention. They've also seen positive responses from neighborhoods where they have a neighbor problem house or problem house with frequent short-term traffic or drug problems or squatters or any number of issues. And they'll park one of these trailers nearby, and the neighbors love it, and the people that were causing the problems tend to disappear because, again, they're not interested in being looked at. Drawbacks, in Minneapolis, they've learned that if you park these things during snowy season, the snowplows will hit them. So I'm glad we don't have that problem. And sometimes the batteries will go dead if you leave them long enough, and we're probably not going to have that issue either because we have the ability to bring these things in and charge them up if we need to, or change our game. I'm a little worried about vandalism, but that's not a fear that's worth holding us back when it comes to hardening our public spaces and making downtown in particular a safer place. Questions?
Are the solar panels particularly vulnerable, or?
They're pretty sturdy. They're pretty darn sturdy, but again, I can't see, in certain locations, it would just be cumbersome to deploy them. But if we were going to put them in a remote place like the airport or in a large parking area during a large sporting event or at one of our parks that we might have problems at, I could absolutely see deploying them because it just makes sense to save on charging time. And then we have a certain portion of the year where they're not going to be so effective, but they're better than nothing. Go ahead.
I have a question about the audio portion that you mentioned. I know when it was presented to us originally, that was like not something that we're going to lead with, or even in like I don't want to say implement, but like engage that part that we're going to just start with video and then maybe revisit later. I know there were a lot of concerns about people just walking about being recorded and how that might be used in an appropriate way, in an inappropriate way. So I'd be curious if we're going to kind of change that course. And
that's a discussion we'll have with the chief, and he'll set that pace. I can say that we have the option to toggle just about everything. So that's a nice thing. Go ahead.
Alan, too.
Oh, okay, I had a question about, is the trailer, the camera configured in such a way that if someone were vandalizing what's down there, would they also be recorded?
Yes. Let me go back to a picture of the mast itself. So if you look at the lower right-hand corner, I guess my camera, okay, so if you look at both the upper left and the lower right-hand corner, and just for context, the left-hand view shows the the larger trailer, which is a 36-foot mast, and the smaller trailer, which has a 20-foot mast. Both are fully extended, and yet my 20-foot looks so inadequate next to its 36-foot brother. Each of the trailers has 2 pan-tilt zoom cameras that are that have high definition, high zoom infrared optics, and then the third camera is what we call a fisheye camera, and it looks straight down in sort of a conical method, very similar to what you would see if you're walking through a grocery store. Oftentimes you'll have that kind of camera looking at the aisles so that they can catch shoplifters. I don't know the full capability of that camera, but that camera's sole design is really to monitor what's going on around the trailer. And I understand that the analytics allow us to set what's called a tripwire or an electronic fence inside the image. If somebody crosses into that image, then we can have the camera send us a notification of some sort. I might be able to have it trip the lights or an audio message. I'm not completely up to speed on all the capabilities just yet because we're still learning.
Thank you.
Ellen?
Is the camera feed stored in the trailer, or is it fed?
Good question. So the camera feed is being stored on an integrated server. When we look inside the trailer, we have the lower drawer on the right-hand side has just a laptop, but the laptop is a server, has 4 terabytes of storage on the laptop itself. When we have something that is evidentiary, so normal video will be kept for 30 days and then buffered over. When something is evidence, that is, we know it's valuable for a case, then we would want to capture that off the trailer. We can do that a number of ways. We can do it through either a cellular connection, which the trailers will all have a continuous cellular signal. We can also do it through Wi-Fi, where we can get up close to the trailer, drive near it, and download it that way through wireless area network. Or we can actually just open up the trailer door and pop a thumb drive on it and just grab it off. So it's nice that we have options so that somebody, if we needed to have a lab tech come out and capture a bar fight that happened at Broadway and Olive, not like that could happen, but if it did, and our trailer was nearby, perhaps we would be able to grab that evidence quickly and submit it. Great.
So I guess on the policy side, I think we'll probably have to figure out some procedures for when somebody says, this happened to me in this space, how you're gonna make sure that gets taken care of. And then on the public outreach space, once that piece is figured out, we probably need to let the public know, you gotta let us know to do this if you would like to report an incident. I think the hope is that it is a comparatively few number of people that could be apprehended based on this for actual crimes, and that the overall temperature downtown will lower.
Well, we're hoping.
And but it is some public education piece, because I think, frankly, people have been tolerating a lot of behavior that they shouldn't have to, and it would be, I think, quite welcome and useful from your perspective to have people know how to interact to preserve this.
Certainly. And the other thing I should mention to your comment is that there's two main cameras that are looking in each in a direction. Depending on how they're zoomed, how they're aimed, what their configuration is, it is possible, theoretical, that somebody could do something near one of our cameras that isn't seen by one of those two. And again, this is a learning process. The nice thing is there's a capacity to add more cameras, so we can add a third view relatively easily. It's pretty plug and play.
Can you operate it remotely?
Yes.
Live?
Both from a mobile device like a cell phone or from a laptop or a desktop computer, very easily. Good.
I suspect, or I would imagine, that this may be subject to public records request information. Is that true?
Certainly could. All of our evidence is, except if it's evidence in an active case, it's not going to be released until the resolution of the case. So if we have a fight that occurs someplace where evidence is captured on one of these things, we would not ordinarily release any of that footage until after the resolution of the criminal case, with some exceptions. Go ahead.
on the policy side as well. I would have more concern deploying these in residential neighborhoods than in public spaces, so I think we should look at that as well.
Sean, we just did the policy back in July.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
this, that was part of our,
That was
them
big.
getting these cameras ordered, is that the city council, we redid the policy for that, so, yeah.
Well,
How many of these are we getting?
3.
3?
Yeah, we have 3 of them total.
Okay. Is there an expected grand opening day, ribbon cutting?
Well, I
Viewing.
I think we're very close to operational readiness. There's still a little bit of learning that has to happen. I've got to get the SIM cards and the cell phone wireless routers.
Sure.
Get some of that stuff figured out before we can actually do anything with these. They have to get branded before we want to put them out in public, and I think the chief wants a chance to see them and understand them, and it should be his rollout, because this was his idea and his project, and I want to give him a chance to realize it. It's a great leap he took, Faith, to get this technology out there, and we're glad to provide it.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Sue. Okay, so our next one up is Lieutenant Tenstedt with our stops data update. Thank you.
Probably should have just left the lights off.
Keep them on.
Don't leave them on.
My name's Ron Tenseth. I'm a lieutenant with Gene Police, and I've had the fortune to be working in the racial profiling data collection project for about the last 2.5, roughly a little over 2.5 years. This is something that our department started back in 2013 when our Chief Kearns had kind of envisioned something like this, and it's since become state law. I've reported a couple times to you guys on where we were at through some different projects, some test phases and whatnot, and then a selection of a data collection platform. I was also able to be on the state steering committee as we looked at the ways that we do this and how we collect it. Of course, the state law said we're going to collect a certain number of fields, like race, but they didn't say what the data you would collect in the race field would be. So I got to have an impact on that at the state level also, which was very interesting. So we have 3 program goals: to be minimally intrusive on the officers, for everybody to participate, and for us to get the data to the state. And the way we started this, of course, was Chief Kearns was, really talking it in services. We started the organizational change probably a couple of years before we actually ended up doing this live. And so that was something that the officers weren't very surprised with. They knew it was coming. They built a case for it, and then we ended up doing the change, and it's fairly successful in just becoming part of the way that police officers do their work every day now. So we collect data on all of our discretionary traffic and person stops. So a discretionary stop is different from somebody flagging you down and saying, "Hey officer, this person punched me." So it's not discretionary for the officer at that point. But if perhaps an officer sees somebody with an open container, they could stop that person and do some enforcement based on that, or a speeding, or you name it, traffic violation. The officer would have the discretion to do that as opposed to somebody calling in a drunk driver and we're dispatched to the drunk driver. That would be non-discretionary. So the way we set up our system is every time you go on a discretionary stop, a mask or a module is created automatically for the officers. It has the date, time, location, whatnot, so all the officer has to do is put in the demographics, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. This is also done all electronically. So this is what the officer sees in the field. This is a snapshot of what the officers have in their cars, on their tablets, or their computers in their cars. So you'll see at the top, we've got all of this is the where, when, etc. And then we have the stuff the officer fills in here is in yellow. It's all drop down or data entry, tap through it. 30 seconds to a couple of minutes, depending on how much the officer gets into. Most of our stops are about 6 fields. They're race, age, whether you knew the race of the person before the stop, whether you searched them, and what you found. If there's an arrest and there's searches and you find things, you kind of go down this logic tree that can take several minutes to fill out, but most stops are fairly quick. You know, a very high percentage of our stops are 6 fields and you're done. This is again a search. If you search the vehicle, most of the time this is going to be no, but if you did, what type of search? In this case, the officer would have petitioned for a search warrant, found other drugs and stolen property, and any notes the officer wants to put in. So generally, the program's going pretty smooth for our tablet using officers. Unfortunately, not everybody uses a tablet. So our downtown officers have a real problem because they'll go out in the field and they'll do enforcement, and then they'll have to come back and do manual data entry, which was not really the design of the program. So we're looking at some ways to use some surplus equipment where the officers can come into the office, log into the tablet when they start their shift. They can go do whatever in the field when they come back on a break or whatever. Everything's created for them. They don't have to remember anything other than, you know, the demographics of the person they stopped. We also have
You can't put this on a cell phone?
No. Unfortunately. There's just not a way that our CAD provider does that. But the tablets are smaller, but they're, you know, the officers are on foot. It's clunky. It doesn't work well. But I think back at the office is about as close as we're going to get to a remedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody, you need a 12-year-old. Somebody create an app.
Yeah.
So if I might jump in, there is an app called Freedom that our CAD vendor supplies, but it's an additional cost. And so we haven't purchased that particular app.
And it doesn't support it.
It also is a big impediment for our traffic enforcement officers on motorcycles because they don't have, that's something we're working to fix. We actually have the tablets in, we just have to wait for some upgrades and some software, but.
Yeah, so that's another one I forgot to mention. And there, as I understand it, Chief Klinko had used to supervise that unit and was really helpful in getting those tablets, so they'll go in the saddlebag of the motorcycles, and then ideally soon e-ticketing. So it'll be much more seamless. So one of the other things that we do is we audit this to make sure that we have 100% participation. And But then again, sometimes people are put on the wrong calls or whatnot through our dispatch codes the wrong thing. I mean, you know, humans are gonna type the wrong thing from time to time. And we have to realize there's times that we're gonna have errors. So what we did is we have this green circled. The officer flags that if they're put on the wrong call type, because they're gonna have a module created. But if it wasn't a discretionary traffic stop, it didn't fall within that, they can just error it out and it'll show resolved on our audit. And this should be automatic also. It doesn't matter what they put in there because it's pulled from the data, it's not reported to the state.
So when you say it's automatic, so do they, when they put in the call that they're making a stop, then does the dispatch then create that when they put that call out? Okay.
So they'll check out on the radio, the dispatcher will type something in. From time to time, the dispatcher will put in a traffic stop or a person stop when really somebody got flagged down for directions.
Okay.
So there's times where that's gonna happen. We realized it was gonna happen, so this is, the best way we can do it is to kind of pull that data off.
And GPS puts the location and stuff in.
It's geocoded on an XY coordinate based on the address or the intersection, or it's close enough. You know, we're talking from a state level. If you're within, you know, a mile, they're good. As they look at the data within neighborhoods, there's some more interest in that, but. So what if an officer, like, say a motor officer, downtown officer, or maybe one of our police officers or patrol officers misses one of these and doesn't put it in? Every night, we audit our stops, and in other words, our traffic stops, pedestrian stops, against our modules, our racial profiling modules. If they match, everything's good. If they don't match, the officer gets an automatic notification that looks like this, that says, you had a stop at this date, time, this location, here's the call ID, and we don't have a matching module. It's typically because they haven't entered it in yet, and they'll enter it in the next day or so. It matches and everything's good. What I see that, and then also, we're a little more than this now, but we have, the 3,500 stops for the year. The 66 that's an exception is the ones that haven't been turned in yet. And again, we get this report and we do actually collect all. And again, that's just a bigger, this is what I see about it's a variety of officers who haven't turned the stop in yet. And these from March are from a previous slide that none of them are nearly that old. So how are we doing? We have some challenges. The tablet issue and the automatic entry stuff is a challenge for us. But we are getting 100% participation, even if it's delayed by a week or whatever it might be. We've finalized our data transmission to the state of Oregon, and the Criminal Justice Commission is now the lead agency on that. And it's working because we managed the organizational change, and that was what was so important. Is we talked it, we trained it, it became part of culture, and now we're into a generation of police officers that's going to be hired, you know, this year and going on, that it's going to be just part of policing as we do. And that'll be actually all over the state, but that is it.
If anybody have any questions, start with you.
When you say all over the state, does that mean every police department?
Every police officer in the state of Oregon, when they do a discretionary traffic stop or a person stop over the next 3 years and 2 more years, will have to report this data. Yeah. In fact, I learned that our stakeholder engagement group at Washington County modeled theirs right after ours. So they took ours and made that theirs.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Steve?
Do we know how the state intends to use this and how it might come back down into police departments?
Yeah, they're gonna do some data analysis off of roughly the Connecticut model of analysis. Really what we're looking for here is there a discrepancy between race and stop? And is a particular person or a group of people being stopped more often? There's two things to that. One is, could you identify the race of the driver before the stop, yes or no? And if no, then you have to look at it separately. And then is once stopped, is there a discrepancy between searches by ethnicity?
So the corollary to that is, are we using this data to do anything? Rather than just gathering and shipping out to the state, are we?
We will. And we'd like to use the same method the state does, so we see kind of apples to apples. Their PhD researcher is still trying to put the final touches on it. Oregon State Police for the last 20 years has been collecting this data, Portland Police for the last 19. And they do things like the veil of darkness. Is there a difference between a daytime stop and a nighttime stop? And is there a difference in demographics from a statewide level with 2 million traffic stops a year or something crazy like that? There's not in their data. But there's a lot of ways to slice this up, and we'll be looking at ways to do that for us locally.
Okay, Jennifer and then Alan and Nikki.
Yeah, so this is really interesting data, but data, of course, is only useful if it's accurate. So is there anything we do to check the accuracy of the data?
Well, because this is the perception of the officer,
Right.
from the perception of the officer, and I apologize if I didn't say that before. We don't do any data validation, and that's intentional. It's not done that way at the state level. It's and there's some basic training, as we talked about, implicit bias and racial profiling and things like that. We do train cultural, do you remember what it's called exactly by chance? Cultural competency, or so we have we have training for it every year.
And is there like a minimum amount of time people need to put in their late reports? Because I could see if I waited a couple days, like I probably may not remember the person as well.
Well, we expect them to be timely.
All right. But there's not there's not a point where it gets kicked out for it because, oh no, it's been like 3 weeks.
No,
How do
we don't ever get rid of them.
Okay.
If you're 6 months late, it makes me wonder why you'd be 6 months late. We don't have anybody that way. But you know, when we're dealing with humans, you have the same group of people that are always the ones that never turn something in on time. There's maybe 1 or 2 of those around our agency that we just work with and try and get them to get their stuff in as close to on time, because I have concerns about that also. If you're a month late, I don't think you have a clear recollection of what happened a month ago.
Can I make one comment to that?
You bet.
That's what these things are for, like on cameras.
Oh, so that you can go back and look at your thing and
That is
I'm one of the
6 months, it might not work.
doesn't have the ability to do it directly right afterwards, so I may get a report that I have to do. And so, yeah, if I didn't have this, I would,
Excellent, yeah.
But unfortunately, she shouldn't have to go back and do that.
Right.
You know, it's that we should be providing a better technology solution for them, and that's what we're trying to do.
Right. Thank you.
If I might dovetail on that. One of the things that Lieutenant Tinseth and I have talked about, and we haven't had the subsequent conversation, but there's the ability to have an email notification to the supervisor, and it's configurable, so you could, if something hasn't been done within a week, an email can be sent to the supervisor, and then a week after that, it would go to the lieutenant. So it's something, and like I said, Ron and I haven't had a chance to talk about it, but it's something I definitely want to explore.
Right. Just a little accountability.
Right.
Alan?
How long have we been doing this?
We have had test programs out in 15, I think. 15 or 16. No, it must have been 16. And we've been doing, we selected the SunGuard as our data collection method through another little test. And we did a soft rollout in December of 17. We've been collecting live data since January 1st of this year. And that first 6 months at the state level, they changed all their pull-down menus. So we went live before they even had all their pull-down menus figured out. So at July 1st, we changed our pull-down menus to mirror the state. So we actually have kind of 2 data sets. And they're a little bit of apples and oranges. So,
Right. I had the same question about the accuracy, but the other question I had was related to, so what do we do with the data? Does it all just get sent to the state, or do we do anything with it?
Well, same question as Steve. We will be looking at the data. We will be doing our own in-house analysis. We'd like to use the same methodology as the state, but it doesn't stop us from doing a different method if we decide to. And if we find that, for instance, there's something that we need to tighten up on as far as a training issue or whatever, none of this data has officer identification on it, report to the state, and that's by statute. So this is not intended to go look for a particular officer who might work in a particular neighborhood and may have numbers out of whack for a city, but maybe not that neighborhood. So that's something that I didn't share with you guys, but that's by statute.
Sean?
So I was curious about the veil of darkness numbers when folks report that they could not tell beforehand the race or ethnicity of the stop. Do we have the ability to look at that separately, because that should statistically conform to the demographics?
What population are you saying?
The could not tell race prior to stop. That segment of the reports.
Right.
We can look at that individually, right?
We can, yeah. We can slice this up in any way. There's a question of if I'm a small coastal community that has a large tourist industry, what is my population? And should I expect it to be representative of my local population, or during the summer months when there's 3/4 of the people in town don't live there? What does that look like? For us, we have the University of Oregon, which may have a different demographic than our city. I don't know that, but so there's talk about, and that's what Ken, PhD researcher from CJC, is looking at. Is kind of, is it census tracts? Is it neighborhoods? Is it cities? Is it counties? How do we slice this up, and what's the right way to do it?
So it sounds like the U of O Police Department would have to do this as well?
They will eventually. They are probably one of the last, so they'll probably do 2020, 2021. So it's a tiered approach. So all tier 1 agencies with over 100 officers, Salem, Bend, Medford, Oregon State Police, Portland, Washington County, Gresham. I'm missing Hillsborough. I'm missing 1 or 2 yet still. They had to go that July 1st of this year. Then we get to that next cut of police agencies where it's 100 to 50 or whatever it is, and then it's less than 50, and that's where actually the bulk of Oregon police agencies are, is less than 100. So they got it going with the biggest agencies, and now they're just kind of bringing everybody else on.
Gotcha. How many Springfield have officers?
60, 70, 60.
Yeah, I believe it's under 100.
Oh yeah, it's well under 100.
I imagine there'll be some sort of report once, right? You mentioned that we launched 6 months prior before the state actually got their life together, but once we change our systems, I imagine next July we'll have something come from the state or something come from EPD where we, sort of look at a year review of the data.
Yeah, what you should look for a timeline on that is the state of Oregon has from July 1st of next year, will be 1 year. They will have from that date until, I think it's December or January to report to legislature. That will be from the state level. I would say that ours will probably be faster. So we'll probably have some report ready fall of next year for us using the same analytics or same methodology as the state.
Thank you.
Or if we decide to slice it up a little different, what that might look like.
Any other questions?
Nice report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Great. Thank you. Good evening.
So with Captain Kliko's permission, we're running a little bit late, and since we have our 3 presenters for our next segment after your report, would you mind going after them?
Absolutely.
Because we have some time and I think built into the end. So we'll just go right to the downtown approaches to the 21st century. We have Lieutenant Smith, Eric Brown, and Colette Ramirez. Oh, we have a stand-in for Colette?
Yes. Do you mind if we sit at, join you guys at the table?
No, please.
Absolutely, come up.
Lisa's room.
Cozy.
So I'll kind of do the introductions of who's presenting, like which you guys kind of have an idea. Eric Brown is an associate planner for the city and has been with the city for 4 years. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
I was giving him. He manages the data collection and management and metrics and monitoring and evaluation on the downtown ops team. Mindy Linder, she works for Cultural Services. She has been with the city for approximately 14 years and has worked in several different capacities with Cultural Services. And she's on the downtown ops team representing cultural services, cultural activities that we're programming. Although I supervise the downtown team, I also have a role on the downtown ops team, and we all collaboratively work together. So what we're going to present to you tonight is the presentation that we presented at the National Walk, Bike, and Place Conference that we just came back from in New Orleans.
Thanks, Julie. So we presented to a crowd of probably 60, 70 people on the work that we've been doing downtown to make it more safe, vibrant, and welcoming. And as you'll see in this presentation, it's really a collaborative effort between folks from all the departments of the city. Police, obviously, planning, cultural services, facilities. Really, it's a cross-departmental effort. And Julie likes to joke that the only people who aren't there are fire. So.
No judgment there.
So we're going to tell a bit of a story of where we came from downtown, the work that, what kind of precipitated the work that we've been doing, where we're at today, and where we're headed. So I don't need to tell you guys where we are located, but it's important to remember that we are along the I-5 corridor, and that brings opportunities and it brings challenges. So being located between Seattle and San Francisco means that we get a lot of travelers. We've got great access to a transportation system, but we also get a lot of travelers who bring a set of challenges to our downtown that we've tried to find innovative ways and strategies to manage. We also live in a beautiful part of the world with great access to the outdoors, but we've always struggled with our downtown. We've made a few decisions over the course of our history that have led to some physical challenges downtown. So Lane County prided itself on its outsized acquisition of urban renewal dollars in the mid-century, and we tore down some of our nicest buildings in our downtown. We lost some really beautiful architectural pieces, and we pulled apart the fabric of downtown. We left holes in the fabric of what was originally there. Partially in response to pressures on our downtown and the suburbanization of retail, we opened the Downtown Pedestrian Mall, also in the mid-century. This opened up in 1971. 2 years prior to that, Valley River Center had opened. And so this suburbanization of retail and the shifting of commercial activity from downtown cores, that was a national process, and Eugene wasn't an exception. Eugene was an exception in that we responded by trying to create a place that would draw people towards its core. It wasn't exactly a success, though, despite our best efforts.
Sorry, what was that? Where is that?
So that was along Broadway. It was Broadway Street downtown. I'm not sure how many blocks it was long. The mall.
Carrollton to Lambert.
Correct. The day trap. So this is a fountain that was kind of at the center of the mall, and Julie has a story of it as a kid falling into this fountain, and just how, although it was architectural, it wasn't maybe the safest piece of public art. And the downtown mall faced challenges right from the get-go. So within 6 months, City Council passed 7 pages of rules to try to deter behavior that was being attracted to the pedestrian mall. And as it went through the years, it eventually had some of the lowest commercial rents in our city. And I think most people would agree that our experiment in a downtown pedestrian mall ended with a failure. We slowly shrunk the downtown pedestrian mall. In, I believe it was 2001, the last 2 blocks of the pedestrian mall were closed in recognition that it just wasn't working. And it was attracting more negative behavior, empty storefronts, lack of eyes on the street, which led to a downtown that people just weren't very proud of. Downtown in the early 2000s was literally the pits. If you are familiar with Parks and Recreation, Leslie Knope had 1 problem on her hands. We had 3. We had one right across from the downtown library. We had one 2 blocks away from that, and a third one just down the street. And these pits weren't just eyesores, they were public health concerns, and they contributed to that sense of despair in downtown, that vicious cycle of divestment in our downtown core. Layered on top of these physical impediments, we also have these 21st century challenges that we're trying to deal with in our downtown. So homelessness and the mental health crisis really shape how we need to approach placemaking in our downtown, and we've tried to attack it from multiple angles and try to provide the support to folks as well as security presence that will hopefully change the behaviors that dominate our downtown. So there's 150,000 homeless people in the 3 West Coast states, California, Washington, and Oregon. So a population the size of Eugene is without housing on the West Coast. And in terms of mental health, the crisis that we're facing, in the mid-century, we had 500,000 mental health beds in this country, and today there's fewer than 40,000. So those people are living somewhere, and most of them have...
statistic again?
So 500,000 to 40,000.
When was the 500,000?
Mid-century.
1953.
Reagan administration. I was going to say thank you, Ronald.
It started with Kennedy, actually.
Yep.
So this is the challenge that we're facing in our downtown, is people don't have a place to be and they're ending up in our streets. This really came to a head in 2016, right around the time that the city was working with Project for Public Spaces on our downtown places. You all probably remember the near riot that took place on the blocks. Certainly our counselors who were around at the time remember this really clearly. It garnered a lot of media attention. And for folks who were on scene, it was dangerous, it was unruly, and it really highlighted the need for a change in approach to our downtown placemaking. The public forum in that fall, winter of 2016 was also dominated by women who brought their concerns to council around safety. Women came and they spoke loud and they were heard that they did not feel safe walking back to their cars, they didn't feel safe walking around at night and not even at day, in the daylight. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who's going to talk a little bit about the approach we've had to dealing with some of these challenges.
Well, I'm actually going to give it to Mindy, because Mindy's turn, and then but I will be bringing it up the rear end here in a minute.
So first of all, thank you, Eric. So all the history that Eric just shared led to a pivotal moment in February of 2017 when the executive leadership team pulled about 10 to 15 operational and division managers around the table with a goal to achieve making downtown safe and welcoming for all people in response to what you just saw. And so they'd really taken to heart what Project for Public Spaces had determined, which is that we needed to implement lighter, quicker, cheaper interventions, and we needed to achieve them quickly, like as in by spring. And this was in February. So the story was recounted to me where the assistant city manager at the time stood and looked across the table and asked, who would it be that would lead the challenge and the team? And everyone collectively looked down around the room, and it was accompanied by an awkward silence. And so the exec said, all right, we're leaving the room for 30 minutes, and when we get back, we want to know who it is that's going to be taking on this task to lead this team that's around this table to achieve these goals. And so they left, and when they came back, thankfully, the fabulous and fearless facilities director, Jeff Perry, agreed to take the yoke of the burden and tremendous expectation of the team to lead the group, and he's still leading the team today. And the team largely looks the same as it did 1.5 years ago. It's grown a bit to include people like myself and this gentleman right over here and others, and we've been working ever since. And so also during this time, the urban development manager, Will Dowdy, was also on a parallel track of implementing PPS strategies as well. And what often happens in cities, similar to large organizations, the world around, similar parallel activities are doing, and the right hand doesn't always know what the left hand is doing. And thankfully, we said, hey, we have some really similar things that we're doing. Why don't we work together? And so the really great thing is everyone decided to work together with a cohesive goal and mission and vision. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 1.5 years. And so I'm going to pass it off to Julie, who is going to share her story of downtown and where we are today. And then I'll wrap it up. Take it away, Julie.
So I kind of want to start with my part is that, you saw the picture up there of the near right in the park in 2016, and I'm in that picture. So I recall vividly, and you could see in the background of that park, and you'll see in some other pictures, do you remember what the park looked like in 2016? It was pretty barren, it was pretty ugly, it was pretty dirty, it wasn't inviting for anybody. But how many of you have spent any time in the park this summer? Did you use the meeting space there for the tables to actually have meetings or have lunch? Totally transformation to what it was in 2016. So when I took over the team in 2016, I recall having the chief and the captain camp car bring me in a room, and they said, Julie, here's downtown, and we're going to give you we're going to give you the mission. And that's to fix downtown. Well,
There you go. Thanks for volunteering.
Imagine that.
What am I going to do after lunch?
That when I walked out of that room. So one of the things, and I kind of share this example, and it's hard to listen to for some of the cultural services people, but I was like, first thing I need to do is start activating spaces so that there's positive behaviors in these spaces. And so I reached out to Colette's team, Cultural Services team, Holt Center's team, Saturday Market, brought them all in a room and said, hey, I need your guys' help, let's work together. And back in 2016, it was like, well, we'd like to help you, but do you have funding? Because we've already used all our programming for the year. But if you come up with some money, we'd happy to help you program it and get it started, and then you run it. And I was like, I don't have the funding for that, but we need to work together. And they're like, well, we'd like to help you, but sorry. And so then in 2016, we had the near riot, and that was the pivotal moment. That was the time where we, as a community and as a city government, said enough is enough. It's time that we do something about it. And so now, after that, we now work cross-departmentally, and what's really kind of an example of the change and transformation that we've had from a city is that I was the only police officer that went to the conference in New Orleans out of, 1,000 people that were there? And so what the challenges that we faced as a city here are happening all over the country in other cities. In fact, I remember the first couple of days that we were there, people would come up to me and look at my name tag, and then they would see Eugene Police Department, and then they'd go, oh, and then they'd walk off. So they didn't understand why a police officer, and I was at the conference not understanding why police officers weren't talking to transportation and cultural services and planning departments and all kind of planning together. So we really blew some minds away when we gave our presentation that what do you mean you guys all work together? So objectives for 2017. I think Mindy touched base and Eric touched base on coming together and working collaboratively. We had 6 teams that worked together to achieve objectives. We have social services, safety, infrastructure, beautification, programming, communication, and monitoring evaluation. So keep in mind, we all have normal other duties in the city, but we also, during the summer, we kind of, we also have a whole nother job of coming together and working as a team. So we initially came up to it with a plan to cover short-term, medium, and long-term initiatives. And what we learned in 2017 is that we really only had the time and the resources to really just focus on short terms. And then, in 2018, we kind of built on some of the things that we started in 2017. So, some of those programs are the Ambassador Program. And so as you recall, after we had the riot in the park in 2016, we put a heavy presence of police in the park to rebrand the park. And then we hired an employee to be a park host. And the idea was that the park host was to be in the park to be welcoming and inviting, but remind people of what the rules were. And overall, that program was very successful, and the community liked it. Everybody that knew what the park was before thought it was a great concept. So this year we duplicated that effort and hired 4 additional ambassadors and inserted them into the downtown. And in addition, we have the park ambassadors that travel along the 50 miles of bike path and 650 acres of parks that we have. We increased, so there's our ambassadors, and we were really, we were thoughtful in the process as far as even their uniform. So we created they're a walking information source. So they even have a letter I on the side of their polo shirt, which is the sign, that's for people to come up and know that they could answer questions. And we really, when we hired them, we were looking for the traits of welcoming and inviting and friendly, but to be a presence to remind people of what the spaces were for. And the park ambassadors on the right, and there's 4 of them. There's only 2 pictures in this picture. We also increased the presence of public safety and inserted different layers. This picture is dear to my heart because it's us, my team actually out doing community outreach. And so when I look at this picture, I think of the success story of helping this couple here that were actually kind of living inside of Kesey Square for a period of time. We were able to get them housed. and access to services and disability that they deserved. They just were locked out of having access to it. And so, you also remember that in 2016, we launched the Community Outreach Response Team, and so we wanted to share this little video with you. Hopefully, if you know how to get it started.
Might have to use the mouse to click on the, if you click on the image, yeah, and then there's the, yep.
They've helped me like 100% get my life back on track.
Homeless for over a year and using drugs, Ryan Garner's life had little direction. That's until he met with Eugene's community outreach team, better known as COURT, in late September.
And they've helped me get off drugs and do treatment. I'm involved in treatment.
COURT is the creation of Eugene Police Sergeant Julie Smith.
I think that it's a different way of policing. I think it's the way of policing in the future.
The team goes beyond traditional policing and collaborates with other social services like Cahoots and Whitebird Clinic to assist some of downtown's chronic offenders, trying to find the underlying issues causing people to act the way they do.
We ask the questions, why are you here today? What happened in life that got you here? And what can we do to help you fix that?
The COURT pilot program ran from April through October. Over those 6 months, Sergeant Smith tells us 25% of the people they worked with found temporary housing or now live with a family member. Those numbers please Chelsea Smith from the Whitebird Clinic, a homeless advocacy group working with COURT.
Expectations have been blown out of the water. Seeing the connection that these officers on the downtown team have with the clients. Before, I'm usually on the street with my coworkers or people who are my coworkers who previously experienced homelessness and therefore trauma that came from law enforcement.
The Park Blocks area downtown is one of the busiest for Eugene Police. In fact, just last month a near riot broke out here after police arrested a man on a drug charge. It's incidents like that that show the divide that still exists between police and the homeless. But the COURT team says with more work, they hope to bridge that divide.
Well, we're setting a precedent by which it's the same to accept help. That allows people to reach out to the police, to Cahoots, to other agencies, and that builds success in their demographic population and peer group.
Sometimes making an arrest is necessary, but the COURT team tries to help the offender learn from the situation and break the cycle of committing crimes.
It may not be a trip to jail, or it may be a trip to jail, but on the way to the trip to jail, we're also going to problem solve with them.
From the humaneness of the approach, it's so much better to work together with the people that need our help and puts them in a much better place, a healthier place. Let's go back to the kids.
We follow them week after week, same basic questions, slow forward momentum.
The team believes the program built momentum of its own, and they'd like to see it continue because success stories like Ryan Garner's make it all worth it.
Volunteer to work with them, and so if you're willing to work with them, they'll work with you.
Eugene Police Chief Pete Kearns told me to make COURT a long-term successful project, EPD would need to add officers in social services, and that would need to be addressed in the city's budget process. He did add the results of a 6-month experiment looked promising. Back to you.
So, fast forward to, kind of where we are today. We're still,
Homeless for over a year and using.
So, COURT is one of the social service aspect that also plays into community court. We work hand in hand with community court, and many of the clients that we work with, we also work with in community court with community court 14. So one of the big things that we actually in 2017 really overlooked was the demographics of the teenagers, and that from 11 to 24, part of our focus in 2017 was really to invite, we wanted families and children, young entrepreneurs and business people to come downtown, right? Who's missing from that? The teenagers, right? And what did we see as a result of that? We saw the crowds of kids basically hanging out at 10th and Olive. That became the social place, but it also became the place where we had a lot of unruly behavior. We had a lot of harassment. People didn't feel safe to get to the transportation hub there. They also didn't feel safe to get to the library. And so in working with that demographic, you know, oftentimes I was frustrated and say, why are you guys just hanging out here? You know, why don't you have something else better to do rather than this? And I heard them, and they would say, look, all these things that you guys are doing doesn't include us. So essentially, we kind of overlooked that. And so coming into 2018, for this summer, we focused on creating programs and positive activities to include that demographics. So there's the Downtown Youth Initiative where we Recreation partnered with Library, and we created activities during the summertime to try to pull individuals in that demographics away from the corner and get them connected to the services that they needed. And the library increased its teen center area and provided activities on a daily basis. With the idea is that if we could get them away from the activities at 10th and Olive, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, and into more positive activities, that perhaps during that time that we spent with them, they could be asking them about education, getting them to services, why aren't they at home, counseling services, etc. Tim, and I'm going to share with you a story and a little bit about the youth mentorship program and the apprenticeship program, which is my favorite program of the summer. So don't let me forget about sharing that story. We also did the temporary day storage. So I think what's really important is that the things that we thought were pretty lighter, quicker, cheaper, simple are sometimes very complex and end up being longer term projects, the temporary day storage. And I'm going to admit, I'm going to stand up right here and admit that I was one of the skeptics about it, about what are we doing bringing this right into the center of downtown, and what are all the terrible things that could be surrounding this. And I'm going to tell you that I was proven wrong. It's been absolutely successful. It is used on a daily basis. It's usually filled. And people are, I haven't had one negative incident or call in the entire time since it's been open. And so we are keeping the day storage. Here you see our lighter, quicker, cheaper. We did finally, we use a pod, and we're going to be increasing the size by reconverting the pod that's on the left there to make it be able to accept more space for people that need it. So,
talk a little more about it, because I liken this. I don't know if people really understand who's using it and what they're using it for, because I think this was...
Right, so the temporary day storage is designed to help people that are maybe living on the street, and maybe they're carrying their household, everything that they have with them, around with them at all times, and that is a big barrier for people that want to try to go do a job interview. If people drag into a job interview a backpack when all their worldly goods with them, that's kind of, a turnoff to potential employers, right? The other thing is that imagine carrying, 40, 50 pounds on your back to go to all the social service place providers that you need to go see. So this way somebody can visit this, they can check their backpack in here with the rules of they just have to pick it up by 4:30 in the afternoon. And that way, then they can go to their appointments and feel that their items are secure, that aren't going to be stolen, and they can be successful at getting to the things that they need to take care of to get themselves in a better way. Anyone have any questions about this one?
I was curious about the court, because I knew that was like a pilot, but has there been funding that will sustain that program, or is that still up in the air?
There has been funding. I think that it's part of the package that was just discussed by council as wanting to continue those services, and I'll talk a little bit more I think there's one little section at the end. I don't want to take away from the rest of but I'd be happy to talk about that.
Terry, did you have...
I was just going to say, I volunteer at the library twice a week, and I go right by this all the time, and I think they really appreciate not having to bring all that stuff into the library, because of course the library is pretty full.
Right.
And I think it's really been very successful.
I agree. The other thing was making physical improvement to areas to make it more beautiful and inviting for positive activities to occur. And so I'm going to go back to the youth mentorship comment that I had to make, is because it kind of plays into, I'm looking at these flowers here, is that the youth mentorship program was a collaboration with Library Recreation and the Cultural Services. And what we did is we referred kids that we were working with on the corner at 10th and Olive, as well as from some of the alternative schools, Echoes. Got a referral for a job interview. And so what we did is we ended up hiring 5 of the youth kids that we had been in contact with in many different fashions to actually employ them for the city for the summer, with the idea that if we include them and they actually are involved in helping make the city the way we want it, that maybe there would be ownership and confidence, and then in turn they would turn around and protect the spaces and be included. And so the story I want to share is that not only was it great to see the transformation, but did you see how the flowers are this summer downtown? Aren't they just beautiful?
Yeah.
And I think downtown looks you know, the best it's been since I've been in the last 3 years working down there. Just beautiful this summer. And so they helped plant these plants. They helped release the ladybugs for the pesticide-free program. They helped paint the bullards. They helped paint and maintain downtown. And my favorite story is that I remember standing in late August at the corner of 10th and Olive, being present, and seeing somebody sitting in the flower bed. And before I could get over to the flower bed, one of the girls that was in the apprenticeship program said, "Hey, get out of the flower beds. I planted those flowers, and they're they've been looking really great, and you're ruining them." And so of course the kid was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and got up, and so I didn't have to intervene in that way. It was great that they took on ownership, and they then policed themselves. It was, I think, a true measure of the program that was awesome. So. Okay, so we worked on park block improvement. So you remember what it looked like in 2017? This is what it looked like on a typical day in the summer. Absolutely wonderful. It was packed most of the summer. In fact, there were a couple times where I wanted to have a meeting at the tables there, but when I got there, they were already filled with other people having meetings and lunch. So anyway, we also did the attended bathroom. This is another one of my funny favorite photos. It's one of my team members posing for the picture. But the attended bathroom, highly successful. Haven't had any incidents at all in the bathroom. As you recall, the portable ones that we had in there were wrought with terrible behaviors that we didn't want to see anymore, right? It's a really nice bathroom, actually. It's got running water and lots of space in there. Again, vibrancy, this is what we want, the kind of activities we want in our downtown and our parks. Kesey Square, as you recall, the tables, that was a complete mistake that they're in there, but it absolutely has worked. They were intended for the deck in the park, but the deck took longer to build, so the tables were ready before, so they offloaded them in the Kesey Square as a temporary thing. But before they could even get them off the truck, people were trying to sit on them. And so it just changes that whole space. What's really cool is that you see all walks of life, everybody sitting at the table together. I will often go eat my lunch there and just strike up a conversation with complete strangers there. It's kind of fun to do. So, and plus they are easily, we can move them around and convert the space for different events, as we did all summer long. Another thing is the beautification project. So on the left and on the right is the same exact spot. You wouldn't even recognize it, right? This is, again, one of my favorite places because it's just near my office. Talk about planting the seeds and seeing the flowers bloom. But there's actually hummingbirds that have lived in that, the ones on the right, for most of the summer. So, all right, and so I kind of talked about that. I'm going to talk about court. Again, I still got another spot, but I want to give Mindy the opportunity to talk about cultural services and to talk about what kind of activities that they designed to bring the masses of people downtown.
Like the masses of people in this picture. So activating public spaces is really important to layer events and layer spaces with a variety of activities so people have multiple access points to engage, and so that there are a lot of people, because the big secret that's not so secret is that people attract people. And so throughout, one of our biggest, the foundation of what we have tried to do is to fill our calendar with high points of signature events as well as layered programming of daily activations. And so what I'd like to talk to you about is some of our larger signature events. So we try to have these high points throughout the summer that draw the broader community, and really we want to include especially families and children. We do feel that that's a really good baseline measurement, because if families and kids feel safe to come and explore downtown, which now we're seeing that more and more, especially in the park blocks. Something you didn't get to see in one of the pictures is something that's up there almost every single day of the week during the summer is Imagination Playground equipment that's outside. They're sort of like these oversized, foamy, giant sort of Tinker Toy building blocks. Those are played with by tiny children almost every single day of the week, which is really exciting and very, very cool. So if tiny kids and moms, like myself, I have a 4.5-year-old and I bring my kiddo downtown and I'm even disabled and I feel comfortable being able to clunk across the street with her holding onto my hand. And that's really a great measure. If they feel safe, then just about anybody can feel really safe and welcome. And so that is a really positive experience and positive association that we have. And so in order to make these happen, we can't do it alone, so we really look to our partnerships. And we partner with, just to name a few, our local arts council, of course, Lane Arts, as well as our Downtown Merchant Association, Downtown Eugene Merchants. Those are both two very key partners that we seek to partner to get their feedback as stakeholders, and also to use their creative vibrancy and ideas to help fuel what we do. And we also, of course, have our internal partners like Transportation Planning, EPD, et cetera, to help us do what we do. And then, as I said, the second part of our programming are those daily activations, which we'll talk about more in a moment. So the overarching brand of what we do that you're probably familiar with is Huge Fun. And that signifies our free events that the city puts on. It's sort of our umbrella brand. So if people see Huge Fun, they know that that's free, it's accessible, fun activities that you can come to with your family and friends. And so those include events that aren't just cultural services and community events, which is my team, but also library, recreation, transportation planning participates, and more. And so in the summer of 2017, we had approximately 135 events under that umbrella throughout the city, and that served over 47,000 people in our community. And that's, just about as accurate as a guesstimate as we had from our counts from our partners. And we don't have the final tallies in for this year, so I don't have 2018 numbers for you yet. And this is an example of one of our newest events that's a signature event that kicked off our season this last spring, which was it was called Griddles and Guides, and it was a kickoff to our season, and it was kind of a risky project. So we had a really challenging spring. As you probably know, we had really beautiful, nice weather. We had a lot of travelers and unhoused folks hanging around downtown a lot earlier. And we, as Cultural Services, weren't prepared with our community events calendar to do anything. Typically, we kick off in June. And so we responded by saying, well, we could do an event in May to kick off and give out our guides with, how about a free pancake fest? And so in that environment, there were more than a few folks came up to myself and my supervisor that they had really strong concerns that holding a free flapjack fest in the center of downtown would draw a bunch of only unhoused folks, and potentially the unfortunate association is unsavory behavior in the center of downtown. Now, we, however, decided we're gonna carry on, we're gonna do it. We are here to serve everyone, and everyone can eat together side by side in harmony. How are we gonna make that happen? So we decided to put our heads together and do some guerrilla marketing. And by guerrilla marketing, I mean literally dressing up in full-size, human-sized banana costumes to get everyone's attention and get them excited to come downtown and eat some banana pancakes. And that is what we did, literally, with our team to go around downtown, handing out flyers to businesses and downtown complexes, going in the parking garages and handing out flyers as people came in at 7 a.m. in the morning the week of and telling them where to come. And so when the day came at 6 a.m., we showed up. Facilities had done a beautiful job of cleaning the square. Julie was there with members of her team flipping pancakes, helping us get ready next to LRCS Executive Director Renee Gruby, and then right down the line, pouring syrup, was Amy Linder from Fire.
What?
Fire was there. Fire was there, represent. So, you know, we had a full representation from all the different departments throughout the city who had anything to do with Huge Fun. We invited down to be behind the line serving folks. And as you can see in this picture, you can see John Ruiz, city manager, next to Denny, and then I think this is maybe Christy Hammett, I'm not sure. And then folks from all along the spectrum of privilege, really representing the full fabric of downtown, the downtown community, which is my community because I'm the downtown programs manager, and this is who we serve, all sitting together, having free pancakes and getting the guide of what free, fun, accessible events they can experience throughout the community downtown. And so it was a risky pilot, but it was fun and it worked out and everyone came to enjoy it. And so it was just one of those, like, test it, dip your toe in, oh what the heck, let's just dive in and give it a shot. And thanks to everyone's participation and everyone going gung-ho, and I do believe the full-size banana costumes, it worked. And so some of the other events that are highlights that we do include Sunday Streets, which on the left, this is an example from the Sunday Streets Huge Parade, which we just brought back last year and was here again this year. This was one of my favorite features in the parade. That's a partnership we do with Transportation Planning. We shut down the streets from Monroe Park all the way to the park blocks. And it celebrates active transportation and just a celebration to the whole community. You have everything from yoga in the streets to multiple music stages. This summer you could even, we partnered with the Eugene Symphony, and they were in someone's carport, and you could conduct a symphony, which was really fun. My 4-year-old actually got to conduct her first symphony. It was really big shoes to fill. She got to get up right after Mayor Venice got to conduct the symphony. It was very exciting. So that's really cool. And there are pedicabs and there are street performers and buskers and everyone all over the streets. And so it's a super fun, great event. And this year we drew over, and it's only, I think, noon to 4, and we drew over almost 13,000 people downtown for that event. And then on the right here, we have Fiesta Cultural, which bookends our summer. And this is representative of one of our tightest partnerships we have with the Lane Arts Council. So Lane Arts Council has been hosting the First Friday Art Walk every Friday for over 20 years. And so just about 4 years ago, they reached out to us and asked, hey, can you help sort of do this layering thing that you've been talking about to help us create this more festival atmosphere? And so we've been helping support them to create that sort of more layered atmosphere during the summer months. And then Fiesta Cultural is a event that happens on the first Friday Art Walk in summer that kicks off an entire county-wide celebration of Latinx culture. And this event happens in Kesey Square, and this year it continues to grow, and this year it drew over 3,000 people. And it grew to include, now it includes also visual artists creating live art on the square with a pop-up gallery, and dancing, music, food vendors, the true sounds, smells, tastes, everything of Latinx culture, which is really exciting. And it's something that we as a city really embrace and support and celebrate, and it's a really fun, exciting way for us to get the community involved and to see that especially in the heart of downtown. And so then another area that we really take pride in is also the visual arts community. And so 20 by 21 mural project, you're probably familiar with on the left. It's an initiative of our Cultural Services Public Art Program, which is to create 20 or more world-class outdoor murals between now and the 2021 IAAF World Championships. And the intent of this project, of course, is to bring color, vibrancy, and to to our urban landscape while fostering the pride and contributing to our identity as a cultural hub of our region and our state and of course our country, because we're going to be on the worldscape, right, when having everyone from around the world right here in our little town. And so this year we brought artists from the UK, Puerto Rico, Japan, New York City, our sister city of Kathmandu in Nepal, the first ever female street artist from Afghanistan, as well as France. And so when the world comes here in 2021, they will literally see themselves on our walls. So it's really, really an exciting exchange of those artists having access to our artists here, because we have incredible artists here in Eugene, but also exchanging those ideas of our artists being able to draw and see and experience those ideas and build those relationships with those artists that are visiting here. And so, so this project, how's it possible? Thankfully, through lots and lots and lots of private partnerships with the private sector. So these expenses are subsidized significantly through sponsorship and in-kind donations, and it's a great example of what we can accomplish when we collectively work together toward a really exciting shared vision. And then the item on the right, the picture is from the a huge coup that Isaac Marquez, our Director of Cultural Services, did this summer by deciding to create the Visual Arts Festival, which really was an incredible celebration and activation that's unparalleled and unprecedented in our community, which brought together and celebrated exceptional street, gallery, and contemporary art unanimously all together over about a week and a half period through downtown, which was really amazing, and all about our local artists simultaneously while these visual artists were visiting us from around the world. And so I want to share with you, if you will, my good sir, this video. Click on that, and you can hear from the artists themselves, and a little bit from Colette, who couldn't be here to join us tonight.
You don't know that one?
I think it's in art. No, I just think Asians don't need to be represented by white people so often.
Je suis absolument sûr que le mouvement du street art est le mouvement le plus important dans l'histoire de l'art, et que nous vivons que le début du street art. Le street art a commencé il y a 40 ans à New York, mais on ne vit encore que le début, et que le street art a encore un futur absolument sur le 21e siècle. Il finira le 21e siècle, je pense, le street art.
I think it's a really amazing opportunity for Eugene to bring these internationally renowned artists to our community, to bring their best work and put their flavor and their vision on our walls. And I think it allows us to kind of envision what's next for our community, and where do we want to go, and how do we want to represent ourselves in the global community too, and show that we are welcome to all people, all cultures here in our community as well.
As you go through life, you start to realise that you can use your art to communicate how you see the world, and it got more and more sort of obvious that it was something needed, that as an artist I needed to make that statement about how I see things, about the world that I'm from, the area that I'm from, and the people that I meet. And I've sort of continued that for the last 20 years now, where I've been making and illustrating the world that I live in.
Flying in Eugene was just amazing, like beautiful scenes, all the people on the plane. I mean, everyone was, from the air hostesses to the people on the plane, you know, you could tell it was going to be fun. Like I say, it's unique. I travel a lot of places in the States, and it is something special.
We want everybody to come downtown for Eugene Walls during that week. It's an amazing time where we have these great international artists, some of the best in the world, creating right on our own walls. What an amazing opportunity to come firsthand and see how they are creating these amazing pieces downtown. We'll have a hospitality station and you can come and just meet other people in our community and support these amazing artists.
Yeah, so that just gave you, and for those of you who haven't walked around and toured the murals, you really should. So the other pillars of our programming, as I said, is really attracting masses of community members on a regular basis. We just try to flood the streets with arts and cultural programming because arts and culture really have an opportunity to build bridges and access points, and for people that really no other activities do, and in a really unique way. It creates opportunities to laugh and play and explore and have conversation in a really unique way, and especially across communities. So some of the initiatives that we've rolled out over the last few years, like the Playable Public Art program, one example is down here on the right, the pianos that we commission artists to decorate, and then we place them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the summer months of the sunny months of the summer. And then we have Fridays at the Park Blocks, where we activate the park blocks with an open beer garden, some form of entertainment, and different layers of activities from face painting to arts and craft activities, etc. And then we have Party on the Plaza at the Holt Center, and then Farmers Market Family Days, just to name a few. So then we've also been discussing for a few years now how we can incentivize our partners, how we can co-power the community, because not only can we not do it alone, but we shouldn't be doing it alone, because we have remarkably talented, skilled, creative, fiery people in the community who can produce a lot of wonderful things. And so we created the Downtown Program Fund this year, which I co-manage with my colleague Sarah Kate Sharkey, and it's a grant-like program to provide stimulus funds to any individual, group, or organization, for-profit or nonprofit, but the stipulation is that the events have to be free and accessible to the public, they have to be in the downtown core, and they have to be between May and September. And so we made an investment and organized and invested in 9 different entities that provided 25 events over that time span in downtown, of all different kinds of events and activities for our community, a range of activities that we would never even think of or really be able to do as the city, frankly. So it was really exciting and really great and awesome. So that's one big success. So we don't have to do it alone. And it was $25,000. So $25,000 for 25 events, and I can tell you events don't cost $1,000 a piece, just in overhead alone. So $25,000 for 25 unique events for 9 different organizations, and that's 9 different organizations, and I can tell you each of those organizations had multiple partners that spanned over the river and back again. With different partners to come to downtown, which was really cool. So then, also communicating our success is so important, because no matter how much we do, we're still having a challenge with combating the perception that downtown is unsafe and unsavory, because for folks that come downtown every day and work downtown every day, that they say it's improving. Folks that don't come downtown still have a perception that it's not improving at all. And so we're really working on trying to communicate our successes, communicate our stories, and we're doing that in a number of ways. So we're working with private businesses and other partners on joint marketing partnerships, such as collectively working to promote cohesive messages, like through a shared downtown website, Downtown Huge, as well as social media, posters, shared calendars, and an influencers group. Because we recognize that word of mouth, of course, is the absolute number one thing, which is also where programs like the Downtown Program Fund that reaches beyond our usual suspects and networks, as diverse a group as possible, is really, really key and important to reach as many different unique individuals as possible, to spread that word, to bring as many people downtown to feel safe, welcome, and like it's their community, and have that ownership and pride that it's their place to come and enjoy. And so, where are we headed? So we know we still have a lot of work to do, because there's never going to be a box that we can check to say, done, right? So that we know that's never going to happen, but we can continue to address, to manage, to navigate, and do our best. And so what we're doing to address the 21st challenges that Eric brought up earlier, such as homelessness, mental health disorders, suburban sprawl, all of these things are really pervasive. And the issues of downtown, they're complex, and we're very aware of this. And there's not one single definitive solution, and there's no, as I said, no checkbox. It's never going to be just done. But our team it's going to require us to continue navigating, to be nimble, thoughtful, innovative, and strategic. And we know that we've seen the successes so far to continue working together. It takes social services, safety, cultural services, planning, et cetera, to be working together. And we are and I'm trying to cut this down for us, so I think I'm going to move a little forward to talk about creating our legacy. I'm going to skip to there to talk about the next 3 years, because really this has been, thanks to the IAAF coming up, it's a really great opportunity. Well, of course, when we get to 2021, it's not like, again, it's over, we're done, we've done it, now that the world's here, what's next? But it's such an incredible opportunity to give us a chance to have a shared goal and vision with the community, both private and public partners, that it's given us a real catalyst to push forward and to have this great investment in projects like 2021 and other things. And some of the other things that we're using this as an opportunity to do are legacy projects that we can be really proud of as a community, such as the $1 billion Phil and Penny Knight campus for accelerating scientific impact, the development of the 16 acres of riverfront just adjacent to downtown with a number of initiatives like the development of the mixed-use buildings, the iconic riverfront park, which we've been needing, the expansion of a vibrant market district adjacent from the riverfront, the redevelopment of the park blocks in City Hall for an iconic town square, which I'm really excited as the downtown programs manager to program, to be more inviting and providing a covered home for the farmers market, a permanent year-round space that truly feels like the heart of our city. And it feels important to recognize that these connections of these projects and buildings with the development of our active transportation system. So like the Ridgeline Park to River Corridor project, as well as the separated bikeways connecting downtown to the University of Oregon campus, as well as downtown to the riverfront via these important connector streets. And so overall, the lessons that we've really learned is that the Downtown Ops team, that's what we like to call ourselves, Downtown Ops, it's really all about collaboration, connectivity, communication, and building the pride that our community feels is really the important groundwork as we embark on these three-year projects that are going to shape our community for the coming decades. And we're really excited and up for the challenge. I hope I didn't skip you, Julie, because I'm sorry we didn't practice the end of this, and I am stepping in for Colette.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right, because I'm going to hand this over to you now.
I think what part of the thing was that Jeremy said, you guys wanted to know what we were doing downtown this summer, where we're going, and then you had some questions about court. So I know that I want to. You guys are all here late, and I want to kind of touch bases with that. Any questions that you have about court? One is that. I know that I've gotten the commitment from our command that we're going to continue to have the court. I think there's there's still some discussion about what's that going to look like in the future, and so they're still discussing about will at some point we have enough to do it, staff to be able to do it more on a full-time basis versus right now we're still doing it 2 days a week for 10 hours, so for a total of 10 hours a week. So my answer is that I've got the commitment, and so do I have the absolute, yes, you're going to have the funding for the next 10 years? No, I don't have that commitment yet or that answer. I know that for now that this would be anything different.
not for 10 years. I mean, I understand with the monies that council recently approved, we're going to be able to sustain that program. But like you said, I'm not sure what exactly it'll look like.
Yeah, I think the city's still working out, is it something that we can do, incorporate as a city, as an entity, as part of some of the other programs that we're trying to do with a day, long-term day use center, et cetera. So if you're wondering about numbers, I think from year to date, we have about 150 clients. Again, we don't work with them all at the same time. We're still holding strong on our 25% of the demographics of the clients that we're working for. We've helped get them housed. And so some of our ones that were in temporary housing are now in permanent housing. Quantitatively, it's hard for, somebody said, Julie, you should share quantitatively how much money we're saving for these clients. Although I've been told that, Julie, you can't come up with that number because statistically you can't say that you could predict that how many, whether the change of the person is whether or not they're going to be arrested that many times the next year. So I mean, some other agencies like Houston Police Department, they came up with a number that it costs $600 every time they give a citation to somebody. So they quantitatively say, for their program, if somebody was arrested 6 times in 2015, 16 times in 2017, but 0 times in 2018, could we take that number? And we're not comfortable with just putting a number out there without having, some control to that. So I can say that I'm still utilizing the highest utilizers list. 300 people are still on that list. But I can tell you that I'm proud to say that of that list, we have been really working on those top 20 to 40. And I actually had a document for you, and I couldn't get it to print. Just highlighted some of the clients that are on the top percentage of that, and where they are. It kind of give you a look at where they were in 2016, 2017, and where they are in 2018. It's really nice to look at the numbers where the big 0 time arrest kind of things, and I think that says it right there, is that it's working, and so I'm really glad that I'm still able to be doing it. So, any other questions regarding? Okay, I'm gonna write down.
I have a number of things I want to cover. I know it's really late, so I'll just keep it really brief. One is, first of all, congratulations to all of you for your great work. I've certainly noticed downtown improved significantly, so bravo to you. I know me, myself, and then other commissioners have talked a little bit about, I guess, what else could be done in order to strengthen your efforts. One thing in particular was the park ambassadors. We have a number of, our Latino population and non-English population in Eugene has grown significantly, certainly in my lifetime. So I have a concern that a lot of those park ambassadors can't communicate with some of those folks. And every Sunday at St. Mary's Catholic Church, there are almost 1,000 people that come outside that building. Most of them non-English speaking. It's a concern I have. The other thing was, in terms of the murals, and forgive me if I'm pointing fingers, but I would like to know, I guess, what the process was in terms of how those were chosen. I'll leave it at that, but I'm sure there's a lot we can follow up on. There's a lot of questions I have.
Absolutely, and I'd recommend reaching out to Isaac Marquez, our Cultural Services Director. He's the one who founded the mural project when he was public art manager, and that's a program that I don't manage directly, so I don't have answers for that for you, but he has all of that information, and we'd be happy to talk to you about it.
And one of the things that also is that, we put the pedal to the metal for the summertime, and then as September now, here we are, now we're in October, it's like we roll things up, and so we start to see some of the behaviors that were workers come back again. We started in 2017. We started programming in June. Again, this summer we started in June, and that's too late. I mean, we need to start earlier. So I have the commitment that we're going to start in April next year rather than June. And again, I think the plans is that how do we sustain this all year rather than just only taking, 6 months or 4 months at a time. So we see a need for that, and we're in the plans for that. And in fact, we're pulling together our numbers for the end of the year, and hopefully we'll be able to get a report to council in November.
The other exciting thing is Julie mentioned we all kind of do this work off the side of our desk. I've managed to wrangle 2 hours a week out of the planning division to load me to downtown initiatives, and we all have full-time jobs, and we just really care about downtown, and that's why we try to find the time to work on it. But we have money in the budget for a downtown manager who their full-time position would be to coordinate this downtown ops team, and so that's a really exciting development. And so hopefully that will help us put the resources and the time, the hours towards this initiative, and commensurate with the importance it has in our community.
Cool.
So anyway, thank you for letting us share and take the time. Sorry.
It's all right. Nice job.
Yes.
Thank you. It was interesting. It was good
Yeah, thank you
presentation.
for inviting us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your good work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
What was your feedback in New Orleans?
We won the conference. We had really good feedback. These are issues that communities across the country are facing. Urban renewal didn't just happen in Eugene, suburbanization hasn't just happened in Eugene. Mental health and homelessness, it's all across the country. So we saw a lot of head nods, and I think
A lot of feedback, and people came up at the end. First of all, they were because I helped present with the group, which was nobody in the entire conference had included police in any of their.
That's just mind-blowing to me. But
So.
Did you do it in uniform?
There aren't many Julies to go around, though, I have to say.
I didn't do it in uniform. I don't think they were quite ready for it. So I think the uniform would have pushed them way over. But I think that as a community, I think we're very progressive in our thought process and what we're doing compared across the country. So I'm really proud of us. And are we close to perfect? Not at all. We're still got a lot of work to do. But I think when, especially it was blaring at that conference, that it really changed the thought process of a lot of people at the conference. All like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should look at like that. So.
I think the collaboration is really unique, but also the way we've been given kind of the keys to the city. We've been empowered to make decisions, and we've been given funding to make our solutions work. And that's unique too. In a lot of cities, you don't have that opportunity to just go forth and do the way we have. So,
Excellent.
It wasn't really that much money either.
yeah, we
did miracles with it.
Yeah.
Lighter, quicker, cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to
I just thought of the one.
Captain Klinko to give us the chief's report.
Well, the good news is I'm only going to take about 40 minutes, so.
Well, we got snacks today.
We won't starve. So obviously, I'm not Chief Skinner. He's had me fill in for the last week. He'll be back in town late tomorrow evening, and he asked me to come speak. I don't have a formal presentation, but he did want me to hit some highlights. And if I don't answer a question, or if you have a question, I'll do my best to answer it. And if I can't, then I'll find the answer for you. So I think the biggest thing that's gone on here at EPD recently is City Council approving the monies that will help our department. I can't say enough about the men and women in EPD and how thrilled they are that the City Council is choosing to invest in public safety. And obviously not all the money is for EPD solely, but the lion's share is, and we're really appreciative of that. From those monies, we're going to be able to hire 10 officers, 5 community service officer A's, which are our street CSOs. We call them our street CSOs. So they're typically out in the pickups. They're responding to cold calls. They're going to traffic crashes. They're providing traffic direction. They're able to do roughly 70 to 80% of what a fully sworn police officer could. Just, they're not carrying a firearm. And then 3.5 dispatchers. Our dispatch center is as burdened or more burdened than any other part of EPD. So again, much thanks to City Council for making that investment. And the chief wants you all to know that he's going to be a good steward of that money. What he wants to do right off the bat is stand up, and we haven't identified what the name will be. It might be the community response team. It might be a street crimes team. We're going to have a meeting scheduled, all the senior staff, on the 23rd to really sit down and sort of brainstorm what this team is going to look like. He gave us some real high-level vision, a couple of sergeants and up to 8 officers that would essentially be a package that he could throw at a particular problem. So we have a lot of burglaries going on in the West University neighborhood. We can have a very high visible patrol that we can direct to that particular problem. We might have a drug house or a problem house in a particular neighborhood, and so the officers can be directed to work that particular problem. It might be we've got things going on in our parks and we need officers to address that problem. So it's this sort of self-contained package that will work very closely with the patrol division, will work very closely with the investigations division, and be able to be thrown at a problem. They're going to be flexible. They're primarily going to be in uniform. There may be some opportunity for them to be in a softer uniform, even perhaps plain clothes, although it's not going to turn into, a completely plain clothes unit. There may be that opportunity to do that. They need to be flexible to work different hours, different shifts, so that they can attack the problem. We're going to be looking for highly motivated and energized officers who are capable of one day focusing on this problem and the next day on a different problem. So he wants really creative thinkers about how to problem solve some of the issues. Wants to get that team stood up as quickly as he can. Now, we have to be pragmatic about the resource issue we do have going on. You probably heard this number before, but from the date we hire a brand new police officer, so somebody who doesn't have experience, it can take up to 18 months for them to go through all their training, the police academy, our local academy, training with other field training officers before they reach solo status. So obviously the officers that we'll be hiring with this money are not going to be part of this team. The chief wants this team stood up as quickly as possible because he wants to show the community that we're responsive to the concerns and that we're utilizing this money in an appropriate and meaningful fashion. So that's really important to him. We're going to have to get creative about how we find the staff, whether it's a combination of some folks from investigations and patrol that are brought together. But we'll be working on that on the 23rd, so more to come on that. The 5 community service officers, he's already directed Lieutenant Mozan, who supervises that unit, to begin the hiring process. So we hope to have those officers up and running. He wants them hired before January, if we can make that happen. Their training process doesn't take as long, so we should begin seeing some immediate relief from those folks, hopefully within the next, say, 4 months, and they can begin out serving the citizens of Eugene. And then the 3.5 dispatchers are going to begin that process quickly as well. So that's the big thing with the staff and the monies that were coming to Eugene. And of course, a good chunk of that money is going to things like the sustainment of the court program and other more service-related options. One of the visions that the chief has, we have a command bus. It's about a almost 20-year-old Bluebird bus, and he's looking at, with replacement monies that are earmarked for that vehicle, he has a concept in mind that has been successfully done in other communities, sort of a pop-up precinct idea. And he wants to be able to have this vehicle that can be put in specific neighborhoods that are experiencing problems and that officers can work from, that perhaps other community resources, P&P, those kinds of things could work from, and be able to direct that vehicle into problem areas so that it's the days of the brick and mortar substation are going away. And so this is something that he really thinks could be beneficial. If we have a problem down in Whitaker, we can have the bus down there if it's over in Westview. So that's something he's working on. I know Salem has one that's soon to be delivered. And he and Captain Camcar were at a conference and were able to take a tour of that vehicle. And when I hear they fell in love with it.
Move to extend the meeting by 10.
I'm sorry?
Second.
I've got to extend the meeting. I didn't realize it's actually 8 o'clock. So Marty made a motion to extend the meeting by 10 minutes. We had a second by Sean. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
All right, I promise to wrap it up. Two more things. You're probably aware that there was a deputy chief process that occurred. The chief said from the very beginning that he was only going to hire someone if he found someone that he was completely convinced was the right fit. And while there were some good candidates that were in that process, he didn't find his person that he really thought would be the best person for EPD. So he did not make a hire, and he's hit the ground with his feet running, and he said, that's kind of been pushed to the back burner now. I've got other things I'm working on, and so likely he'll revisit that idea at some point next year. So more to follow on that. We do have some hiring going on. Even with the additional positions we're going to be getting with the monies we just got, we still have about 15 vacancies. We have 10 officers in training. We are about to have one of the biggest classes that EPD has seen, maybe ever. We are looking at hiring 13 brand new officers and 4 lateral officers for a total of 17. They're due to start November 5th. The 4 lateral officers, 2 of them are in state, so we should be able to get them out on the street sometime, maybe by the end of this year or early next year. The 2 out-of-state laterals should be a much quicker process to get them out on the street. They will need to still go to a shorter equivalency academy and not the full 16-week state academy. But so we should be seeing those resources pretty quickly. And of course, the 13 new officers, I already referenced the training process for that. We also have 11 officer candidates in background phase right now. Depending on how the backgrounds turn around, then there will be medical and psych reviews. So we're hoping maybe 6 or 7 officers out of that group that would start January 7th. And then they have tentative plans to have 5 separate hiring processes through the course of 2019 that will finally, hopefully, get us up to full staffing and be able to fill the new positions that were created as well. So it's a busy time for our field training officers, for our background investigators, for our academy staff here locally. With that said, the chief is making a commitment that he's only going to hire. He individually meets with every single candidate. He has a real sense for the values that he wants from the individuals who are going to come to work for EPD. He wants to be the one who gives the thumb up on the final selection. And so I will just end in saying that there is a level of optimism here at EPD. I've been here 22 years. There's a level of optimism that, frankly, I don't know that I've ever seen. And so I can tell you that the men and women of this department, whether they be sworn staff, the professional staff, I see everybody really pulling together.
I understand some folks are extending their tour as opposed to leaving that plan.
That is true. We do face a potential wave of retirements next year, and of course, the PERS, any PERS changes could have that impact, some impact on that. But there have been a number of employees who were talking about retiring. They would be eligible next year, and they've strongly reconsidered that. in part because of the enthusiasm and the esprit de corps that really has been boosted here at UPD. So that's kind of the highlights of what I've got. Does anybody have any questions for me?
In the 12 years I've been on the council, I don't recall us ever having a full complement of cops.
No, it seems like we've constantly.
Do you remember when the last time that was?
You know, I really don't know. I don't know that we've ever truly been there because, you know, there's a constant cycle of turnover for one reason or another. It would probably be the first time in my time here.
How long have you been here?
22 years.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's cool. It's good.
Good. Any other questions? Okay. With that, we have about 4 minutes to quickly go around for any final commissioner comments. Marty, you want to lead us off with anything?
Do we need to do the minutes?
Why don't I move to approve the September 20? Do we already do that?
We already did.
Oh, sorry.
At the beginning.
I'm so used to following your lead. No comments.
We skipped it. 'cause we didn't have
No,
a
we
quorum.
didn't because he came back.
He came back and we did.
So I came back and I did it.
We're doing
Oh, okay. I don't
You said
know.
aye.
I remember saying.
I should say that on camera.
Steve, do you have anything? Joel? John?
Actually, I take it back. I thought the presentations tonight were wonderful.
Yes,
You all
thank you.
did a great job, everybody, including your board.
Sean?
Living downtown, a lot of these changes have been really minor, and I didn't really recognize the amount of manpower and work that went into all of it. So like, it seems like a subtle thing to me because it's happened slowly, but it's noticeable, and I really appreciate it.
Ditto. Just, we'll make that short. Well, the community outreach update, I went to the Friendly Street Neighborhood Board meeting, and they already have made a date with the chief and the chief of, the fire chief to attend, so I just explained what the commission did and took up their whole public time, but.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ditto on the presentations. Community outreach, chief is actually going to be at the Laurel Hill Valley Neighbors meeting coming up in this month.
I don't have anything. I'm good.
Nothing. Any last words, Kevin?
You know, the only thing I would say, under the leadership of John Reese and Pete Kearns, I think what you see here in Eugene is a little different than other communities, and you heard that from Julie. I've worked more with other departments in this city than most of my counterparts with other agencies, and I really think that collaborative approach is unique, and it benefits the entire community, so I just wanted to make that comment.
Well, thank you, everyone. The only other comment I will make is that it was great to see the city council's response to the increase in funding, and then the 3 different ones that we're going to look at in the next 18 months to see which is the best fit. I was also asked as a member of the police commission to sit on the revenue committee for the cities put together to figure out how to pay for this money long term. So try not to be upset if we come up with some sort of
You were just gonna write a check,
measure
Bill.
to come up with this. But thank you, everyone, for the night, and with that, the meeting's adjourned.